almost started the wrong way again, you see?
You got it right though, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Welcome into the Top 40 Timeline video show where we have fun and fight amongst ourselves and talk about rock and roll music. And we're brought to you by Radio GTA and the brand new 2-hour Kenny Tosh live radio show from Belfast, which is going to become very popular in the morning.
Thanks, Kenny. That's awesome what you're doing.
Yeah, he's on a British station as well at the same time. And Kenny, of course, has been a huge broadcaster in the UK. I worked with him at the United DJs when the Top 40 Timeline ran on that. That's the Tony Prince station. That's the one, the radio station where all the big wigs from England, all the big jocks.
Yep.
And I was so proud to be a member of that. And that's how Kenny and I got to know each other. And online radio is really changing. It's growing to a certain point where we might take over mainstream within the next 10 to 15 years, I would say, if there's even going to be a mainstream left.
Who knows what's going to do as time goes, how things are going to change.
That's what we think of when we, our generation get in the car, you look for the radio right away, but the new generation coming up, they don't bother with it.
Well, you can Bluetooth it, or, I mean, I have Sirius XM, and it's from all over, so.
But the youth, they're listening to online radio, they're listening to their own podcasts and their own playlists. And who can blame them? Because you've got the variety of what you want, right?
Yeah.
But online radio is growing, and we're happy to have some fun with you. Now, of course, we're brought to you by Radio GTA and Kenny, but I'm going to let you start off with the friend Leah Lywood, who's right here, of course. Is the one that puts all this work together on the Top 40 Timeline video extravaganza here, where we talk about this week in history and what happened musically. The radio show plays back the tunes from this week in history. This show, we talk about the things that happened. And so one kind of compromises with the other.
Yeah, there's so many, that's
Go ahead.
That go. So we'll start off with a little bit of a tidbit. Gene Simmons of KISS taught at a public school on Manhattan's Upper West Side for 6 months. He quit when he realized the reason he wanted to be a teacher was because he got to stand in front of people and be noticed, and God only knows Gene likes to be noticed.
Yeah.
But what he really wanted was to stand in front of people on stage as a musician.
I see him interviewed sometimes and I don't really know how to take him. What kind of person is he? He doesn't look like he's a very friendly kind of guy.
You know what? I think he is. I think it's just that he's very staunch in what he does. He's not easily budged. He's just a very strong personality. Now, I don't know. People that know him, of course, are going to know better than we are in terms of that, but I don't think that he's not a nice person. I just think he's very set in his ways.
I didn't say what. He just has a certain edge to him that doesn't seem very friendly sometimes.
And it's just his way. He's staunch. He's, like I said, he's set in his ways. At least that's how I see him.
Maybe it's my imagination. Now, what is Carly Simon singing about in You're So Vain? In the line, you had one eye in the mirror and you watched yourself gavotte.
Gavotte.
Gavotte is a French folk dance that was popular in the late 16th century. I often wonder what the hell she was singing.
And I actually put up a picture with that. You can see them in the old garb and the dresses and the suits.
Here's some history and trivia. November 27th, for instance, 1941. Country singer Eddie Rabbitt is born in Brooklyn, New York. See, I wouldn't have thought that Eddie would have been born in Brooklyn, New York. I would have figured Eddie was born in Kansas somewhere, but he was a Brooklyn boy.
Yep.
And before embarking on a recording career, listen to this. He wrote the hits Kentucky Rain for Elvis Presley and Pure Love for Ronnie Milsap. That was a huge hit for Elvis, and I had no idea that Eddie wrote that. So Eddie really was pocketing some change in the early 70s before he became famous on his own.
Now, this one here, I read the book by Ken Kesey, The Electric Acid Kool-Aid Test, or Kool-Aid Acid Test. And it's Ken Kesey is also the author of, what was that? Oh my goodness. Anyways, I don't remember right now, but there's another one that he wrote that was very popular. And in 1965, he actually traveled around with Grateful Dead. And you were either what they classified as on the bus or off the bus. So you were either on board with them and doing their antics and having fun and traveling around California and whatnot, or you weren't. So author Ken Kesey and his band of merry pranksters hold the first electric Kool-Aid acid test in San Francisco. And in the 1970s, I may or may not have partaken in one similar. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Can we delve into that a bit more,
No.
or is it none of my business?
Well, later on, maybe.
All right.
But it was a lot of fun, I'll just say that.
In 1976, Kevin Godley and Lowell Cream left 10cc to work as a duo and concentrate on other projects, including developing the Gizmo, a device used to make neo-orchestral sounds on a guitar. And of course, they were big members of 10cc. The song "I'm Not in Love," you remember that? You know, there's no.
I remember them all. Are you kidding me?
there's-
10cc was big.
There's no musical
then.
instruments on that. That's all vocal. That's all and overdubbed and absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
1991, one more here. U.S. country singer Garth Brooks asked fans to bring 10 cans of food to a grocery store in exchange for a lottery envelope, some of which contained tickets to see Garth at a forthcoming show. Over 10,000 cans were donated to a charity.
Well, I mean, who wouldn't? It's like getting a lottery ticket and scratch and win, right?
Well,
Same
Garth's
idea. You get you get an envelope and you either win or you lose.
I love Garth Brooks. I love country music, but I love Garth. Garth is.
Yeah, he was pretty cool. He is pretty cool. He's not gone yet. He's still with us.
Oh, he's still with us.
That's what I
Definitely.
just said. He's still with us.
Yeah.
So, son of a preacher man singer Dusty Springfield used to spend hundreds of dollars on cheap china, then blow off steam by breaking it all. Mary Weiss of the Shangri-Las recalls standing at the end of a corridor with Dusty and throwing crockery down it as hard as they could. Motown singer Martha Reeves has a similar story of finding Dusty in her dressing room, breaking china, and being asked to join in on the destruction.
She had this fetish for breaking china.
It was her way of letting off steam. It's what it is.
Well,
What
that's
it
an
is.
expensive way to let off
So,
steam.
well, like I said, she spent hundreds of dollars, and I mean, back then, that's a lot of money when you think about it.
You can do the next one. Go ahead.
1942, Glenn Miller became the first person to be awarded a gold disc for his Chattanooga Choo Choo single.
Here's a mind blower. Freddie Mercury and Brian May from Queen. They grew up less than 100 yards from each other, but never met until 1970. And boy, are we ever glad that they met. I'll tell you that.
Of course.
The Pill, Loretta Lynn, from 1975. Upon its release in 1975, radio stations refused to give Loretta Lynn's song The Pill airplay because of its content regarding birth control, which was widely looked down upon at the time. And I don't actually remember that song, but
It was, well, and you know
The
what?
year
There was
before
a
I was-
lot of controversy because it was about the birth control pill, and back then, you didn't talk about that.
Oh, I
That
know.
was a mother and daughter conversation. That was not to be had with the local community type of thing. So there was a lot going forward, but she was that person, and not just with that, in a few different ways, that was that person that was bringing things to the surface that were conversations that they typically swept under the carpet, right?
going
They
way
were
back,
bad.
way back to 1925, the WSM Barn Dance debuts on the Nashville radio station WSM. 2 years later, the show is rechristened the Grand Ole Opry, and it's just as famous today as it was back then. And WSM, still on the air.
Yep.
Still on the air.
It is.
1964, the Shangri-Las went to #1 on the U.S. singles charts with the teen death song Leader of the Pack. When released in the UK, the song was refused airplay by the BBC,
Shocking.
of course. Oh, that's bloody shocking. That's awful. Leader of the Pack, I can't hear that. Have people, oh, it's just awful. Probably due to its death theme, I would imagine, where it went on to chart 3 times. Number 11 in 1965, number 3 in 1972, by which time the BBC ban had been lifted, of course, and once again, number 7 in 1976.
So it came and went, and came and went, and came and went, and came and went.
The British charts are so interesting because they're so different from the North American charts and the Australian. We're all different and, European, but
Well, the Shangri-Las being female too, I'm sure that didn't help any with that image, right?
one thing about the British charts is they go to extremes sometimes. Did you know that Laurel and Hardy were #1 in 1973 with, I can't remember the name of the song they did, the Old Pine Tree or something. But they were #1 in the UK, Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
I remember when I was a kid listening to Radio 1. Come on, I'm trying to remember which song it was, but it was a great song by Laurel Hardy.
Yeah, I don't know that I knew that one. I'll have to. Now I'm gonna have to go looking things up because that's not. So.
You go 1991.
1991, Nirvana recorded a performance for a BBC TV music show, Top of the Pops in London. Big show. When asked to lip sync Smells Like Teen Spirit to a pre-recorded tape, Kurt Cobain protested by singing an octave lower. He later confirmed he was imitating Morrissey from the Smiths and attempted to eat his microphone at one point. He also changed some of the lyrics, exchanging the opening line, load up on guns, bring your friends, for load up on drugs and kill your friends.
Why not have some fun with the audience?
Leave it to Kurt. There's always something going on.
Yeah, sure do miss him. Boy, I'll tell you, Kurt Cobain, he started the whole grunge scene from Seattle. That's where it all started. Here's a wee tidbit. Canadian folk rock legend Neil Young and American funk superstar Rick James were in a band together before they became famous for very different styles of music.
Now, can you imagine those two?
I didn't know this one either. In the early 60s, James Johnson, later named Rick James, left America for Toronto, Canada to avoid having to serve in Vietnam. He was from Buffalo. And there he met Neil Young, and they played together in a band called the Minor Birds.
Myrna
Birds.
The Myrna Birds.
I've heard of them, actually. The band even got signed to Motown Records and were about to release this single when Rick was arrested for going AWOL. Of course, got thrown into it.
No, Rick.
Yeah, that would put an end to that. That ended the Young James partnership forever. And who would have known what would have happened there?
Now, the only thing I didn't find out that I would like to know about is the Myrna Birds, which is actually a bird. It's an actual bird. But why the Myrna Birds? Why that name? There's usually a reason that you come to a conclusion that sometimes they just like it, but typically there's a reason, right, for a band to come up with a name. So that's something that for me, I'm kind of curious why the Myrna Bird, even though it only stayed for so long.
Trail of the Lonesome Pines. That was the name of the song. That was
and on that note,
no, I had to tell because I forgot it. Trail of the Lonesome Pines was the song.
And here's it just came to me. Ken Kesey also wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, if I remember correctly.
You see how good we are together?
If I remember correctly, it was him.
Yeah, okay.
He wrote the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test and One Flew Over the. They would kind of go together, I think. Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Well, it was the same kind of,
kind of in that genre
stuff. All right, what are we talking about? Lennon here?
Lennon was inspired by Timothy Leary's campaign for governor of California titled Come Together, Join the Party against Ronald Reagan, giving him the idea for the track. Come together.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Right now.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that had anything to do with American politics. 1975, Fly, Robin, Fly. Silver Convention from Germany hits #1 in America for the first of 3 weeks. The disco tune has very few lyrics because the German group can't speak a word of English.
And if you hear the song, that's about all it says. Fly, Robin, fly, fly, Robin, fly.
Great lyrics.
It was actually a good still. When it came out, I liked it when I was younger.
Well, it's the old disco days, the Hustle, Van McCoy, all that stuff. 1980, ABBA scored their 9th and last UK #1 single with Super Trooper, the group's 25th top 40 hit in the UK. The name Super Trooper referred to the gigantic spotlights used in stadium concerts. Wow.
Slow down. We're not even halfway in, and we're halfway through.
Are we? Well, we got lots of time here.
That's what I said. We have lots of time. That's what I was saying. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. 2003, in front of a crowd of 40,000 plus at Greenpoint Stadium in Cape Town, South Africa, the Corrs make their first concert appearance as part of Nelson Mandela's 46664 campaign to raise AIDS awareness in Africa. Alongside artists like Bono, Beyonce, and Peter Gabriel, they help raise money for the Nelson Mandela Foundation for AIDS.
Wow, Nelson Mandela. So in 2003, was he still in jail? Or I guess
No, he was out.
He was out by that
no,
time.
he was out. He was out.
And this is a long.
He actually was there as an MC throughout it all.
Yeah, Nelson Mandela. He was You know, he was in prison for a long time. How many years was he in prison?
He shouldn't have been in there.
No, that's absolutely
Far too long. I forget now what the time was, but it wasn't a year or two. He was in there a long time.
Yeah. 2016, Minneapolis-based musicians Lydia Liza and Josiah Lemansky flame a cultural debate about gender roles when they post a reinterpreted version of the Christmas song "Baby It's Cold Outside" with new lyrics. Instead of pressuring her to spend the night, the guy respects her decision to leave and helps her get home safely, of course. This was with consent version of the 1949 holiday seduction song removes any trace of threat or aggression. And when the girl sings, "I ought to say no, no, no," the guy replies, "You deserve the right to say no." In the original, the reply is, "Mind if I move in closer?" They post it on to SoundCloud, and the next day the Minneapolis National Public Radio station, The Current, plays it. The song goes viral and the duo appear on CNN, leading many other news-ish outlets to pick up on the story. To Lemansky and Liza, this modern update brings the song less creepy by adapting a scenario where the man puts the woman's safety and well-being ahead of his own desires. And this holds water with feminists, but many with more traditional values object, seeing it as another attack on traditional gender roles, a hot topic in the wake of Donald Trump's victory in the presidential election. Isn't that funny how music and politics are always tied
Well, and
together?
you know what? It's one of those things where even for so many years, it's cold outside, was well loved, everything was fine, until fast forward, people started picking apart the lyrics and the sexual content within the lyrics.
Well, look at that Little Richard song you were talking about last week.
Was it meant that way? That I've never looked into it, but was it meant that way for that song?
I don't know.
I don't either, and who knows back then, right? But because it has so many not so nice sexual innuendos in it, that's why they did what they did.
This stuff still happened in life in the 40s, but it wasn't talked about. It wasn't.
Well, no, because back in the day, you had to keep your mouth shut, right? A woman did not speak against a man. It wasn't something that was done. If something was done, you may tell someone close to you just to have someone to talk to, but often there was no take it to court. There was no going after them legally. There was no nothing. It was zip. Yeah. Even if a wife knew a husband did something, zip.
Yeah.
Right? So
that was the Beaver Cleaver generation, as I call it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Everything was tickety boo, you know what I mean?
Everything was peachy keen.
Well, the family used, you gotta look at the way we've changed in our lives. I mean, you and I eat when we're on the run, we don't eat, and we abuse ourselves. Back in the 50s, families used to say, hey, it's 6 o'clock, you sit down there and you relax and you have dinner with your family.
Sunday. I mean, I was raised very much like a British person because Grandma, her background, my grandfather's background was Scottish, and Grandma's whole family, the Longs, were British, right? And we always had the roast beef meal at lunch and noon.
You know, one thing I
Big
remember.
hot meals were then, not at supper time.
And I'll talk to the Kenny Tosh audience there because we post our video on the Kenny Tosh Facebook page. The way I grew up in the UK was I had a mother, and my second mother was the Queen, and we always had a Sunday dinner roast on a Sunday, and we never missed.
Me too.
Never missed. And every time
you were there at this time.
Every time I smell a roast cooking in the oven, I think of my parents and the wonderful times we had together. We shared together.
And it's funny you say that because I'm currently with family right now, helping out, and a roast was made earlier this week, and I said I feel like I'm at home when I was a little girl because same thing every Sunday it was a roast. It was always the big dinner. Yeah, it was the big dinner, and there it was cooking in the kitchen, and I was going. Just like a little girl, here I am almost 60, and I felt like I was like 7 or 8 years old again, running out to the kitchen when Mom was cooking.
And nobody can make roast potatoes like my sister. I'll tell you that right now. She learned from my father. My father used to cook the Sunday roast. My mom used to take a break.
Oh no, I learned from my mom, and she was
my
quite
mom,
good. She was very good at those
But
meals.
my father liked to take control on Sunday and, you know, and let my mom get some rest. And,
Mom might have liked that, but it never happened.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. Not for those dinners. Those were Mom's responsibility.
After the breakup of the British rock band The Zombies, who scored hits like Time of the Season, of course, a promotion company in America hired some kids from Texas to go on tour as the band, claiming they were still together. Eventually, the actual Zombies served the fake Zombies with a cease and desist order, but the fake Zombies stayed together and became ZZ Top. There you go, right there. And I saw some early pictures of ZZ Top without the beards.
Oh, I've seen many of those.
And,
oh yeah.
They looked. They didn't look like ZZ Top.
No, not at all. It's even hard to see. Even sometimes you can see them even with the, but their beards were so long and so much hair on the face, right?
Didn't they have just a great sound? No, I mean,
Oh, it was. It was a lot of fun listening to them.
oh, yeah.
Cockney Rebel bass player Paul Jeffries was one of the 270 passengers on Pan Am Flight 103 by a terrorist bomb when the plane crashed over Lockerbie, Scotland. Sex Pistol John Lydon and his wife Nora missed the flight because his wife hadn't packed in time. One time I'm sure he was grateful for the woman that took too long.
Yeah.
The Four Tops also had been booked onto the flight returning to the States for Christmas, but missed it after a recording session overran.
Wow.
So there were some things that just weren't meant to happen with some people. And
The Four
meant to
Tops
happen
are
with
still
others.
very much around. And, some of them have died, but there's still a few members left. Bill Haley and the Comets began their careers as Bill Haley's Saddlemen, a country music act. You could tell they were country-based, but they were country rock.
Yeah, they're more like, they were like a newer country back in that day. For
Bill
sure.
Haley had that white rock and roll sound, though. It was sharp, it was good, and there was nothing that Bill played you couldn't dance to.
Yeah.
Some great rock and roll. 1966, the brilliant but erratic guitarist Jeff Beck officially leaves the Yardbirds after a year and a half of the band. He later formed the Jeff Beck Group, of course, and the rest is indeed history. And I'll do one more. 1991, Billboard changes its methodology for determining the Hot 100 using SoundScan data to track record store sales and BDS information for radio plays. SoundScan, an electronic system that counts record sales when they're rung up, replaces record store reporting, which was typically done with phone calls. BDS is a Shazam-like service that identifies songs played by radio stations, which eliminates the need for stations to report their playlists. First number one on the revamped chart is Set Adrift on Memory Bliss by PM Dawn.
I have to ask you. I don't know. I'm assuming you might know. You know what Shazam is?
Shazam, you know.
Because you don't have a new phone.
No, I
So
don't have.
and it's an app. So
Yeah.
that's why I wondered if you.
I still
Just
don't
thought
know
I'd ask.
what exactly is an app, anyway. It's an application, I know, and you add to the phone. But
Because there's all different things you can do on a phone, and it gives you
I
that
know.
software to do it.
I know.
And
People
Shazam
are-
is one of them.
Yeah,
so.
I know we have to get an app for the radio stations too.
That'd be
keep
awesome.
me
That would be beautiful.
All right,
So
so. go ahead.
1984, on the morning show, a Houston radio station reports that Bruce Springsteen's concert from the night before is still going on. And he's just pulled the 250th girl from the audience to join him on Dancing in the Dark. Some of them are gullible listeners actually believe it. Can you imagine?
There was a radio station back in the 70s.
Wow.
Who said, hey, there's a huge concert out in the fields, out in, I-21, featuring
Yeah.
Elton John, Creedence Clearwater. It was the transmitter site. But people flocked there.
Well,
Scott-
they did. They didn't know any different back then.
Here's something that many people don't know. Scott Carpenter, Pat Bergen, my old buddy Scott Carpenter, the guy from Chum Radio. He was the boogeyman. You know what he did one day? Back in those days, Top 40 radio was powerful. He wanted to see how powerful Chum was. He says, okay, everybody hit the car horn right now. And you wouldn't believe the deafening
I believe
sound that
it.
came out of...
Especially with Chum.
Yeah.
Oh, especially with
Scott,
Chum.
do you remember that? I'll send him a
I don't know that I remember, because that was, I think, when I was young. But you know something? I used to sit and listen to Chum. I think I told you this before. I wasn't more than about, I'm going to say around 5 or 6 years old. And I got my first transistor radio. I'll never forget it. Leather black case, beautiful little radio given to me by my Uncle Frank and Andy. And I sat on the front step for hours, day after day, listening to Chum AM. And I was only like 5, 6 years. That's how much I've been into music, even as a...
When I was 5 years old, my father used to love washing the car. And he used to do it every other day. We used to get home early around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and I'd be off school. I'd go out and help him, and he'd have CKOC on.
I was
Mike
doing it too.
Jaycock, and what I remember when I was 5 years old was a lot of Beatle records, a lot of British stuff. And Mike Jaycock, I ended up working with his brother, Peter Jaycock at FM 108, when I was working there. So it's funny how, you know, but and the first time I really fell in love with radio, I heard Jack Armstrong. I was sitting on the willow tree out in the backyard in the farm, and I heard this guy with this amazing voice come on the air, and he talked faster than any human I've ever heard in my life. They call him the Mouth, Jack Armstrong. I met him a few times.
He would have been good doing rap.
He would have been, he was amazing, absolutely. Sadly, he died. He fell down the stairs. And broke his neck or something. But,
oh my goodness,
But
so sorry.
A couple of months after I finally got in touch with him, and he always said to me, "Big Daddy," he says, "I like your stuff." Do you know how much that meant to me?
Oh, I believe
Having my idol telling me he liked what I did? Unreal.
For sure.
2023.
Yesterday.
This is sad.
It was yesterday, actually.
This is sad. The
Thursday.
Pogues frontman, Shane MacGowan, God bless him, he died at the age of 65. He was in rough shape at the end, following a recent hospital stay after being diagnosed with encephalitis. And the singer-songwriter whose hits include 1987's Fairy Tale of New York, which is a controversial song as well, and A Pair of Brown Eyes, of course, had been unwell for some time. He had formed the Irish punk band Pogue Mulhone, which later shortened to the Pogues in 1982, released 7 studio albums. MacGowan also had well-documented problems with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
But God bless him, he gave us some great music, and it was sad at the end there that he died the way he did. And he was only 65 years old, which is sad. But, you know, time marches on.
It does, unfortunately. Fortunately, but unfortunately. It depends on how you look at it. Stevie Nicks was offered the opportunity to write the lyrics for Purple Rain, but turned Prince down. Did you know that?
No.
Stevie and Prince were friends. Prince even played keyboards on Stevie's Stand Back.
I didn't know that.
So when she mentioned she'd like to work together again, he sent over a 10-minute instrumental of the music that would become
Purple Rain.
Purple Rain, with a request that she write the lyrics. Stevie rejected the opportunity, though, because she didn't like the song.
No, not because...
Or not because, sorry, that she didn't like the song, but because it was overwhelming. She said in an interview, I called him back and said, I just can't do it. I wish I could. It is just too much for me.
I think Stevie could have handled that.
I do too, but she didn't feel that way, so...
There you go. The Animals' 1964 single House of the Rising Sun was the first #1 to have a playing time of more than 4 minutes. And the first chart was put together in 1952 by New Musical Express, phoning 53 record shops. And here's a little bit of history for you and trivia for today, December the 1st. 1958, Life magazine becomes the first major publication to print the phrase teen idol when they use it to describe their cover subject, Ricky Nelson. Now there's a guy that had the gals following him wherever he went. I love Ricky
Nelson. He was
Nelson.
A cutie though.
Hey,
back in the day, he was cute.
You know, Ricky, whose claim to fame was starring in his parents' long-running radio and television series, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, released his debut album, the chart-topping Ricky, the previous year. And by the summer of 1958, his single Poor Little Fool was the first #1 hit on the newly minted Billboard Hot 100 chart. And one thing I remember about Ricky Nelson was I was on the air New Year's Eve, 1985,
right,
with Catherine DeCourt, who used to do the weather on Channel 11 years ago, and we worked together. And I remember we were putting our New Year's stuff together and all the top songs of the year and everything else at FM 108. And we used to have a newsroom with a BN machine. It was a tick, 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 tick. And when that thing used to go off 5 or 6 times with the bell ring, It was always the order of importance. 1 is not 2. This was a 5 rare. So we went back and tore it off, and sure enough, Rick Nelson was killed in a car crash. So we had to change all our plans within 15 minutes. And we played Rick Nelson all night long.
That's got to be hard because that's a shocker. You know how
yeah, such a big star like that, yeah.
Well, I mean, you know how attached we often get to a lot of the musicians, like their buddies. You know, you get into the music with them, you get to know them like they're friends. Right?
Everybody
So one thing that happens, that's why I think that the majority of collective, you know, and people around the world, they just get so close through their music. Right, that when that happens, you really feel it.
Oh, absolutely, and we didn't have any problem with contact.
And you only got 15 minutes to get over it.
Yeah, well, you know, we had
FM
108. We were an oldie station. We had every Rick Nelson 45 there was. So we just played Rick Nelson all night long, and we had put callers on the air. And I remember the night Lennon died. I wasn't on the air then, but I remember
that night too. I wasn't on the air.
I was watching Monday Night Football, and Howard Cosell said John Lennon is dead, and I just about died.
Yeah, I remember.
Elvis, I was sitting at the corner of Credit Woodlands and Burnham Thorpe Road when the guy on Chum came on and says, I have something to report.
I was only about 13 years old when they said that he had died. So it was August the 12th, I believe, 1978.
I believe 77.
77?
When Elvis died, yeah.
Okay, 77.
77, yeah.
And I remember, like 12 years old. I remember I was at home, and it came up on my little alarm radio clock beside my bed, and I was like, what?
When you get somebody that big, that huge in the industry, it's like a family member has died, you know. Elvis,
well, that's what I mean.
Beatles,
you feel it.
Rick
You really feel that ouch. You know,
I felt it again when Fats died and when Jerry Lee died, because those guys were Chuck Berry, same thing.
Oh, there's so many. I could list a whole bunch of them that, you know.
But the fathers, the big ones, they're the ones you remember. David Bowie. All right, well, let's do this one.
1976, the Sex Pistols appear on the Today program on London Regional TV as a last-minute substitute for Queen. After being goaded by host Bill Grundy, they swear repeatedly, included the dreaded F word, shocking sensitive viewers. It's clear from the start that Grundy has the group on simply to mock them, as they are examples of the punk movement, which journalists like him find reprehensible. Some girls from the group's entourage stand behind them during the segment. One of the Susie and the Banshees, whom Grundy engages. I've always wanted to meet you, she says. We'll meet afterwards, shall we? He replies. This prompts guitarist Steve Jones to call him a dirty old man, and it goes downhill from there. Boy, oh boy. Grundy asks him to continue, so Jones calls him a fucking rotter. The incident causes a media frenzy and leads to stricter enforcement of broadcast standards, pushing the punk movement even further to the fringes. It also establishes the Sex Pistols as authentic punk rock, reprobates something their label EMI decides isn't for them, and they drop the group in January.
Well, they were one of the shock bands that came along in the early days of punk. 1997, using a technique called circular breathing, Kenny G sets the Guinness World Record for longest note held on a wind instrument when he keeps it going for 45 minutes and 47 seconds. Wow. In 2017, the Nigerian player Femi Kuti breaks the record going 51 minutes and 35 seconds.
Can you imagine?
No, couldn't imagine.
No, that's somebody who knows how to play a wind instrument when they can go that long.
I would imagine.
2012, San Diego Mayor Jerry Sanders declares peaceful, easy-feeling day in honor of Jack Tempchin, who wrote the Eagles' hit In the City. The ceremony takes place at a hot dog joint called the Wiener Schnitzel, where he wrote the last verse while waiting for his order. Tempchin is presented with a golden wiener at the event. Can you imagine a golden wiener?
Do you know that White Christmas was written by a pool in Palm Springs, California in 110-degree weather?
No, I'm not sure if I did or I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's when it was written. Irving Berlin wrote it on one of the hottest days in California history, and he wrote that song. You know, it's amazing what you find out when you start digging around, and we're almost out of time here.
We are.
We're brought to you by Radio GTA and the new morning show with Kenny Tosh at his posh studio in Belfast, and he's live on Radio GTA Monday through Friday morning from 7 Eastern That's noon UK time and 4 a.m. Pacific, right? And then Big Daddy comes on, and then we have Magic Matt Craig and the Music Man James Rogers and the Moose Tracks and the whole bit on Radio GTA during the day.
Yep.
And we'd like to thank you for joining us for the Top 40 Timeline video show. We're heard every week on the radio as a radio show, and of course we're on our YouTube channel, which is Halton Hills Online, and that's where you find all our shows, right?
It is.
There
I
we
know,
go.
because I do the work on it.
I know.
Actually, I got some work to do on it. I just so busy lately. I haven't had much
Lee
time.
Lakin was unable to be here this week, and we sure did miss him. He was at a
We did.
personal funeral, a family function, and we send our condolences. And Mandy had to run off. She's on assignment in Cambridge. So we're here, but we're here, you know. Now,
We're always here.
I know. I'll let you say in just a moment after I finish this. This is the Mike Divine Train.
No, that should be how we end it.
No,
Is the
I think it'll be
chimes.
kind of neat if I started at the same time as you say it.
Oh, we're gonna do that?
Yeah, you kind of a doubling
right.
up. You know, there you go.
All right, so here we go.
There we go.
Uniting community worldwide.
There you go. Assume the position.